Mark Schlereth said Caleb Williams isn't a real quarterback. Then a couple days later, he tried to take it back. So my question to you, Stink, and the Bears fans, what does he actually believe? Let's sort the mail. I want you guys to take a listen to this clip here and tell me if you can make out exactly what it is that Mark Schlereth was attempting to say about Caleb Williams.
You just flat out, and I'm going to quote you. You said Caleb Williams isn't a good quarterback.
Right.
And I went, excuse me? So why don't you?
Yeah, well, Caleb Williams.
How do you defend saying Caleb Williams is not a good quarterback?
Caleb Williams is not a good quarterback. He's a dynamic athlete. He makes big-time plays. But is he a good quarterback? No, he's not a good quarterback. Because he doesn't play on schedule. Like, I mean, my evaluation is watch how many times they get into a late in the third quarter or fourth quarter and they're down 21-7. Right? And then he holds the ball, he scrambles around, he makes 3 big throws, and all of a sudden they win a game 21-24. That's not playing quarterback at an efficient level. That's being a dynamic playmaker. So at this particular point in time, Caleb Williams isn't a good quarterback. If you were ranking that class, you'd put Jaden Daniels ahead of him. You put Drake May ahead of him. I'd put Bo Nix ahead of him. You know, this generational talent who's supposed to be a great quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. He's a great playmaker. And when it comes to off-schedule football, the guy is probably about as good as it gets. He is Kyler Murray with more height.
All right. If you heard that, he is Kyler Murray with more height. Now let that sit for a second, because he listed every quarterback in Caleb's class with the exception of Michael Penix and J.J. McCarthy. So minus those 2 guys, Caleb is behind everyone. Not better in some ways. They are better, period. And to me, that's not a hot take. That's a house fire. Because Caleb just won the NFC North. And while Jaden has laid claim to a division title, as well as Drake May, and they have gotten further as a team in the playoffs, I believe that all 3 of them have had the same trajectory at some point. Last year being the impetus for Caleb and Drake. And so to say one of the wildest things like that indicates to me that Stink has obviously forgotten what the standings were last year. We might want to tell him about those. At the same time, it is mighty ironic in the same vein that just days later, we on ESPN 1000 get to hear somewhat of a walk back of that. So let's take a listen to that particular statement that Stink has gone on ESPN to clean up, and let's see if he clarified anything that might make sense to us all.
Can you explain yourself when you said he's not a good quarterback?
I think when you break him down, here is a guy that has unbelievable potential, and he makes unreal plays. He is as dynamic as anybody. But I think when you start to really break him down from the standpoint of play in and play out, some of the plays that he leaves on the field, the plays that he gets sloppy with his footwork, some of the inaccuracies on some throws, those are the things that I said he's not even good yet. He is not a good quarterback yet from all of that standpoint. Going through progressions on the front side to the back side, he loses his footwork and he has accuracy issues at times doing those things. So here is a guy to me that's as dynamic as anybody in the National Football League when it comes to playmaking, and he has not even polished himself. And a lot of this is endemic of being a young quarterback coming out of college where all you do is play in gun and all you do is turn down automatic gains because you want to make big plays down on the football field. So I look at it from the standpoint of when he becomes the quarterback that Ben Johnson is trying to make him become? The guy who falls in love with a boring, the guy who doesn't pass something by to get something bigger. When he becomes that quarterback, then I think you're talking about exceptional. Then I think you're talking about a guy that is going to go to, is going to go down as unbelievably great because he's got the other stuff. Like, I just am a believer in what I call the 70-30 rule. And maybe it's more of an 80-20 rule, but 70% of the time you got to play on schedule. And if you don't play on schedule, you end up costing yourself more plays, or you end up costing yourself bad plays as opposed to making the good plays. And guys that play off schedule on a 50-50 or 60-40 kind of, like, they decide to play off schedule because they pass things by, those guys eventually cost their teams games. And so until he starts doing that, that's when I think he'll be good, like really good. As of right now, I think he's dynamic, he's explosive, he's all those things. But as I always say, hey man, diarrhea is explosive. I don't want it every time I go to the bathroom.
Yes.
All right. So if we can take or try to extrapolate from that, that's not a clarification because it is a completely different take. It's almost like switching teams at halftime with jerseys. The assertion that he was implying these things, because we listened to the entire question that was posed to him on his podcast, and there was no delineation to tell us about if he takes these metrics, if he does this, if he plays a 70-20, because the indication would be that Caleb did not play 70-30 balls, he might say. And let's say he plays 65-35. Is he not able to, as Stink indicated in the second one, able to clean those things up in his third year and progress to being a better quarterback as opposed to not being a real quarterback? Because he made no caveats when he made the statement. He indicated that Caleb's more playmaker as opposed to an actual quarterback, and that can end up costing your team games. When in fact, if I'm not mistaken, Caleb was responsible for 8 game winning comebacks. So, in the instance that the quarterback did put himself in less than great or ideal situations early on, as far as the game goes, the team in general, whom I blame for a lot of those things and learning the system in the new years, would kind of have that message of Stinks be returned to sender, because I believe that backlash hit the mailbox before the follow-up did. And had he went about trying to clarify those things in the beginning, or laid out the reasons why he believed Caleb could be better, as opposed to flat out making a blanket statement that he's not a quarterback, I think that my delivery or my take on this one is that my actual issue is not the flip per se. It's that he is acting as if generational talent cannot still be an improving passer. Two things can't be true at the same time. Caleb is a generational talent, and Caleb is still progressing and learning. Because basically every young quarterback with a high ceiling, see Patrick Mahomes telling you that he didn't understand the blitz or reading defenses until his third year. Wink, wink.
I didn't understand how to read defenses until like halfway through last year. I understood coverages, but how to be able to pick up little tendencies defenses do, stuff that Brady and them have done.
I would venture to say that the tools show up before the polish does oftentimes when it comes to a quarterback. So when we say that Caleb's more flash or playmaker than quarterback, that's more Tim Tebow to me than it was a Caleb Williams type of thing. So the generational isn't finished. And if we haven't seen a ceiling like this before, those may be different conversations. But if Stink is to say that he has not developed as a quarterback and is not a good quarterback, then I wouldn't know exactly what side of the mic that he's standing on. So he tried to send a hot take, if you will. The return address, as I told you, hold up to him. And Postal Gang, what I want to know as far as the real opinion goes, was it a hot take? Or was it a walk back of a hot take in the second piece that we heard below? I want you to drop it in the comments to let me know if we heard two totally different stories or if we heard a cleanup and clarification of the first one. Nonetheless, we're going to circle back to this midseason and see who actually delivered, whether it's Caleb or Mark Schlereth. So until next time, till next delivery, I am Postman 1914. Bear down, be gone.